Hello everybody, you're listening to the Art Show on 106.6 FM Wickham Sound. This is the weekly radio show where we chat about the local arts news. We have a different guest on each week. We head over to the Rye Zone for a short story and or some poetry. We play local, unsigned and or independent music. And we catch up with Twangling Jack Ford over in the Ilk Shed for a weekly album review. As always, you can find us on Facebook. If you search for the Art Show on Wickham Sound, you should be able to find us. We are repeated on Monday nights on Wickham Sound. We're on the Wickham Sound Listen Again, iTunes, Spotify and wherever else you get your podcasts. Please do go ahead and leave us a review and a rating on your podcast platforms. You can reach out to me here at the studio by dropping me a line on dane.cobain@wickhamsound.org.uk. That's dane.cobain @wickhamsound.org.uk. I'm particularly keen to hear from poets, performers, musicians, people with local arts news, MP3s to share, etc. Don't hesitate to get in touch. So this week we're going to be joined by author Maree Davis. Before we do that, we're going to head over to the Rye Zone, and here we have Twangling Jack Ford with part 4 of his series My Musical Journey.
It must have been about 1983. I had been made redundant from my job at a bedroom furniture company and had been given a decent payoff. I was able to crash out and do unpaid work at a studio in Walthamstow that I had helped build. I was eligible to join the government's Enterprise Allowance Scheme as a songwriter and trainee studio engineer. This scheme was supposed to be a way of encouraging entrepreneurship, but skeptics called it a way of massaging the unemployment figures. I rented a room above the studio, which I occasionally shared with another songwriter who also worked at the studio. That was Phil Ryan. I worked on all kinds of sessions, including a couple of rock stars who urgently needed to record a Eurovision entry. It was a weekend and we were the only free studio they could find, and I was the only studio employee available. The song was purposefully awful. I still remember one of them asking the other one what he had, and he replied, "Oh Valentino, blah 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 silver screeno." It could easily have been a contender. One night when the studio was empty, Phil suggested we record my new song. We set ourselves the challenge to make it as sad as possible, and people seemed to like it.
Just a song of love, nothing very deep, just some words that came while trying hard to sleep, an idea that just grew into a song of love for you. Just a song of love, it didn't take too long. I just played some chords, the words just followed on. I guess it's nothing new. Just a song of love for you. Just a song of love for you. St. Norman seems a bit old-fashioned. Maybe some of the words don't rhyme, and the melody is just too familiar. Well, that's just the way I felt at the time. Just a song of love I might just throw away. No words can win your heart, no matter what they say. It won't change your point of view. Just a song of love for you. Just a song of love for you.
When I had moved back from the studio in Walthamstow, I did a thing we used to do to prove we had written a song before a certain date. by sending ourselves sealed registered letters containing cassettes. For this crude publishing enterprise, I called myself Stowaway Songs. If I'd had a band at the time, I would have called it the Waltham Stowaways. I met up again with Dane, the ex-Chevron's bass player and manager. With about 4 months left on my scheme to run, I set up a studio in the shed at my parents' house, and Phil, Denny and I worked every day demoing songs. Phil was gigging with a sax player called Rick, and they met a producer and fruit importer who asked us to write an entry for Eurovision.
Do you remember when we danced to get to the table? Do you remember how we laughed and said go up to take away the music? Dancing in my heart, baby, when the music starts to play, always seems to carry me away. Don't matter what they say, you're dancing in my heart. Doesn't worry me when we're apart. I know we had it right from the start. Just baby, baby, you're dancing in my heart.
There was a song that I had written right at the start of my time playing gigs. It was a live favourite, and various lineups I played with had tried to record it but failed.
Each time I see you, I know it's gonna break your heart. Each time I see you, I know it's gonna break your heart. You think he's only doing what he should. I tell you, baby, he ain't doing any good. Each time I see you, I know it's gonna break your heart. Each time I see you, I know it's gonna break your heart. I know you love that guy, but can you see? He's gonna make you cry. I let you cry on me. I'm waiting for change, I'm waiting for love, I'm waiting for you when he's high enough.
We also did a version of this song with Phil singing, and we played that to the producer stroke fruit importer. He liked it but wanted us to record it again without harmonies and jangling guitars. This was very disheartening. He also wanted me to sign a contract with terms I could not agree to. However, he did give me mangoes, and they were not that common in the suburbs back in those days. Years later, the owner of the studio in Walthamstow asked me to sign a contract allowing him to sell our jangly pop music, because the Stone Roses had become big.
Break your heart.
Big thank you to Twangling Jack Ford for this latest entry into the Rhylight Zone. You're listening to The Art Show on 106.6 FM Wickham Sound. I'm your host, Dane Cobain, and this is Humans Can't Reboot with Mars Behind the Crescent Moon.
Far away, stars peek through, foggy wing around the light, hanging high in an empty night, surrounded by a wooden wind. inescapable loneliness, wandering out so far behind the moon, hidden Mars. Say goodbye. Are you hanging out here tonight? Hidden behind the crescent moon, you be inside. Will anyone appear? Please come soon. Longing for, waiting for a sign. I can't find any sign of life. Found myself in windswept land, solitude, red sand, and habit as a single song. Only words spoken alone. Transmissions far away, wait to return one day. Nighttime when the soft wind blows, I can know what I've always known. Say goodbye. Are you hanging out here tonight? Hidden behind the crescent moon, you be inside. Will anyone appear? Please come soon. Longing for, waiting for a sign. I can't find any sign of life. Longing and lingering longer than I was thinking, waiting for any sign, any feeling of life. Longing for, waiting for a sign. I can't find any sign of life.
Talking away, I don't know what to say. I'll say it anyway. Today's another day to find you shying away. I'll be coming for your love, okay? Take on me. Take me on. I'll be gone in a day or two. Needless to say, I'm odds and ends, and I'll keep stumbling away. Slowly learning life can be okay. Say it after me. It's no better to be safe than sorry. Take on me. Take me on. I'll be
That was Charlie Bryn with his cover of Take On Me by Aha, and before that we had Mars Behind the Crescent Moon by Humans Can't Reboot. You're listening to The Archer on 106.6 FM Wickham Sound. I'm your host, Dane Cobain, and it's time for us to be joined now in conversation by this week's guest, who is author Maree Davis. Okay, well, the first question is one that I ask everybody, which is, what was the last book that you read, and what did you think of it?
Okay, well, I've actually just read Jadelyn Ash's Love Notes.
Cool.
And absolutely loved it. I loved the character development. I felt like, to me, that the characters became my friends.
Awesome.
And that's what I really loved about that. And I actually, reading 2 books on the go at the same time, Romancing the Beat by Gwen Hayes was the other one. And yeah, again, that was a kind of a quick read, but it sits on my desk now in front of me every single day. So
awesome.
That kind of lets you know what I thought about that one too.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's one I've not read, but I've obviously heard a lot of things about it. I mean, I feel like I should read it, even though like romance isn't my genre, but I feel like I should, just to, I guess, to understand the genre a little bit more. And I'm sure there's stuff you could apply to other genres as well.
Yeah. I mean, I'm only just starting to get into looking at romance, and it's just found it great.
Awesome. Well, we'll probably talk about that a little bit later on as well. But I thought a good place to start would be if you could tell us, what can you tell us about Maree Davis?
So Maree Davis is a pen name that I've chosen to go by. She's a parent of 2 kids, 2 teenagers now, and my son has ADHD. So I just would live in a small place over in New Zealand. You can probably tell by the accent that it's that it's somewhere far away, and just loves family life and enjoys time with the kids. Has a dog, spends a lot of time with the dog as well. The dog's been a fantastic addition to the family, really nurturing for both the kids. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I was gonna say, I mean, is the dog like? Is it like a conscious choice? Is almost like a form of therapy? Because I know with my cat, one of the reasons I got my cat was because to give me a bit of a boost in my mental health, and also to make sure, I guess, that there's another being that I'm responsible for. It makes me look after myself a bit more. Does that happen with the kids?
Exactly. It was a really interesting, actually, because the dog initially we brought in for my daughter. Mm-hmm. She really, really wanted it, and I think that was, I guess she'd had a lot of harder times coping with her brother's situation. So that was interesting. Over time, first 2 or 3 years, she was really the focus for the dog. And in the most recent times, actually, Trixie's become my son's companion. So it's just, you've seen the shift within the family as well at their different stages. But definitely we got a dog for that purpose of just being part of that, almost like a therapy dog in a way.
Yeah. Awesome.
It's calming.
Cool. And I suppose, when it comes to your books, I know one of the first things you did was to sort of identify who the target audience was and to get to know them, so that you're writing specifically for like a specific section of people. What can you tell us about who the target audience is, and how did you sort of settle upon that as your target audience?
So the target audience really is parents of kids with ADHD. I settled on it because I found that as a parent myself, when I was looking for the book that I wanted to get the support, I couldn't actually find that book. All the books that I was looking for were around how I could parent my child, but I actually wanted to know how to look after myself. Mm-hmm. And I realized within the community as well that on Facebook chats and things, that's what a lot of parents were looking for. They wanted to know, but what do I do? How do I cope in this situation? So I was just out there. I mean, and I think I have kind of, the subtitle actually says ADHD, self-care for mums of ADHD boys. So it's quite, niche down a lot. However, I think the feedback really is that it's actually for all parents of ADHD kids.
Yeah, and it makes sense. I mean, kind of coming back to what we were talking about, the idea of like having a therapy animal, that you've got to, when you do have a child with ADHD, or I'm sure with just children in general, really, you have to look after yourself to be able to look after them. And I think that's what my experience of like a lot of my friends who are parents have found, is they put so much of themselves into their parenting that they almost sort of neglect themselves. And so I think it's a really good idea to have a book out there that actually helps people to look after themselves as well, so that they can be there for their kids. You know, you want to be sticking around for a long time, right? And I wanted to ask you about some of the people you've worked with along your publishing journey. So perhaps I know you've worked with some coaches. I know you've got like a network of author friends that you kind of work with. You've got your team of like writers, editors, all of that stuff. So who are some of the people that you've worked with?
Okay, so I've been incredibly lucky to come across this amazing team of publishing coaches. Yourself being one of them was extremely a big part of me getting onto social media and figuring out actually what to do there. Corey Roop was absolutely fantastic from the editing side of things. Absolutely just loved working with her. And being nonfiction, she really helped me build the book and make sure it was on the right track. Jana S. Brown, she's fantastic with newsletter promotions and actually, again, helping me get the book out there. And apart from that, there, CJ Anaya, Lauren Matthews, fantastic feedback on covers, book blurbs, just the general, a great team. And yeah, and since doing that, that was really for Maree Davis's book, that was the team that I worked with. But in the same thing, met up with a lot of students, and we do have our own little WeChat group, and it's fantastic. So we just kind of get on there and catch up now once a fortnight, and it's really good just to support each other through the process.
Yeah, well, and I suppose I think this is one of the things that people who haven't written books don't realize, because there's this stereotype of the writer just being this sort of solitary figure in their ivory tower or whatever, and it takes a whole team to make these things happen. And I wanted to ask you as well, you've got an accountability partner, right? What is an accountability partner?
Yeah, so Dora Pokora is a fantastic accountability partner. We get together once a week. We make our lists of things that we want to achieve during that week together, and then we check in the following week to see what we've ticked off. And it's been a great way to actually push each other. Those weeks when you think, oh my gosh, I'm not going to, it's like, oh my gosh, she's going to tell me off if I don't get that one ticked. Not quite, but we really just drive each other to keep going, because there are some times when it's just like, oh, that's just about too much this week. But if it's been on the list, we really want to get it ticked off. Yeah, cool. That's great.
Awesome. So I want to talk to you a little bit about your first book, about the ADHD book, and then we'll move on to some others. And so I wondered, you've kind of talked a little bit about how you settled upon ADHD as the topic, but were there any other subjects that you considered writing about, or was that pretty much from the get-go what you wanted to cover?
It's a hard one. Everything that I was looking at was around positive mental health in some form, and I'm also a holistic health practitioner, so it was always going down that pathway. But it just kept coming back to me, and it was like, if I don't get this book out, that's actually my personal story, I'm actually not going to get anything out. So as much as I looked around it, this one just kind of had to be the first. Yeah,
and I think, as you said as well, it's a book that you yourself have needed, so you know that there's a need for it out there, and it's kind of like, if you don't do this, who will, I suppose.
That's what I felt. And it was like, and I think if it had stayed inside me, I don't think any of the other books I'd done would have been done fully, because this one actually just needed to get out first.
Yeah, cool. And what are some of the key takeaways from the book that you wish you'd known, kind of as a parent of a child with ADHD, that you wish you'd known, years ago when they were first born and when they were sort of toddler age?
Probably not the toddler age for me. It's more in the primary school age, and it's the whole thing of it's okay to parent differently. It's okay that just because time out works for all of your friends' kids and it doesn't work for your son, that's okay. And being able to make that call, to make those changes when your child's different, to understand, I think as well, the judgment and exclusion that does actually naturally happen. Unfortunately, ways to get through it and ways to manage it so that it's not your problem, so that you actually can get pushed through that and know that it wasn't actually you that was the problem, that and working to deal with that. Schooling, that there are other options, and that you've got to be strong and keep pushing through and pushing for what is going to work for your child, because they are all unique. So there's a lot actually to pretty much, and And the options there for self-care for I had to find a lot of that out for myself, but just to be able to open a book and say, well, actually, have you thought of just having a bath, and lighting a few candles? Because sometimes in the crux of it, you just don't even think of that.
Yeah, for sure. Awesome. And so you've kind of hinted at this before, and I wanted to ask, like, are you going to stick with nonfiction, or do you plan to move into fiction eventually?
Yeah, so as you know, as you can see by my reading books, I am exploring romance, just fiction. I would like to do some more Maree Davis. There are other books there inside me, but they're just not ready yet.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to do something a bit more lighthearted, because it was pretty heavy when you're writing about your own stuff. So I'm kind of enjoying the idea of exploring romance.
Yeah,
lighthearted.
Well, and I suppose that goes back to that idea of, lighting yourself a bath and running yourself a bath and light some candles. I'm a big fan of reading in the bath, and it sounds like a romance book is like the perfect way to sort of, as you say, it's a bit more lighthearted. So when you've had a stressful day as a mum of a child with ADHD, you're kind of covering all the bases there. You're giving them, here's all the like factual stuff you need to know, and then here's something that you can read and just enjoy yourself, just lose yourself in a good book.
Exactly. Yep.
Awesome. You're listening to The Archer on 106.6 FM Wickham Sound. I'm your host, Dane Cobain. I'm here in conversation with this week's guest, who is author Maree Davis, and this is the Sepia Tone Folk Collective with Help You Out.
Baby, let me help you out. Darling, if you need me, just sing and shout, and I'll be there, just pick up the phone. Don't wanna think that you're on your own, so if you think that you need some company, don't be scared to come reach out to me. Don't hide away if you're feeling lonely. It's okay, oh baby, let me help you out. Baby, let me take you out. Give me the benefit of the doubt, and I'll be there, we can hit the town. I'll make you laugh if you're feeling down. If you think that you need to give your mind a rest, have a chat and get things off your chest. Deep inside you know it's for the best, and it's okay, oh baby, let me take you out. Smile. I can see it's been quite a while since you were free, so put on your shoes. We'll take a walk and talk about your blues, and I know about the pain that you've been through, the rage and disdain, I see it too. But please let me explain something to you. You'll be okay, baby, let me make you smile. You need from me. Tell me the guy you want me to be, and I'll be there, just say the word. I want to help, but I haven't heard. So if you think that you maybe want some space, or perhaps you need a friendly face to get your head back to your happy place, that's okay. Tell me what you need from me. I cross the line. When we're together I forget the time. We're just the same like 2 in 1. They seem like lies when you're having fun. Babe, you were lost and it was me who found you. And although this advice may astound you, just think about the people that you keep around you, and you'll be okay. Tell me if I cross the line.
That was Help You Out by the Sepia Tone Folk Collective. You're listening to The Art Show on 106.6 FM Wickham Sound. I'm your host, Dane Cobain, and it's time for us now to be rejoined by this week's guest, who is author Maree Davis. And what have you learned throughout the publishing process that you wish you'd known when you'd started? I mean, is there anything that you've learned from publishing non-fiction that you're going to kind of apply to going into fiction?
I think the biggest thing I've learned that it's not just about publishing the book. And if I'd known that, I'm not even sure I would have made the jump. But that it's not. I'm not going to say that's the easy part, but it's there's a real set formula there for getting that book published from step to step to step. The thing I didn't know was actually about how you get it into the reader's hands. Yeah. And that's, like I said, you, Jana, CJ. There's a whole lot of you that have actually been really instrumental in teaching me that, and that's a huge part of publishing that I wasn't really aware of when I jumped into this.
And what are some of the sort of tools and techniques you use to get your book out there and into people's hands?
So I've started newsletters. I've got a newsletter which goes out every month, and social media. I'm trying out there with social media. Get into some Facebook groups and just communicate with people within the ADHD parent community. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of where I am. I think as a pen name and trying to keep a little bit of an anonymity. Is it's I'm not going to put myself actually out there. But yeah, that's where I've been focusing.
Cool. And I wondered, how do you find the time to work on your books while doing everything else in your schedule? So as you say, you're a holistic health practitioner? You've got a family, you've got a dog, you got your books to think about, you've got your next book to write while promoting your existing one. So how do you balance all of that?
I just think it's a mum thing. I think mums can do it.
Yeah, they
mums can do everything. Yeah. No, I'm an early bird, and I get most of my publishing done first thing in the morning for a couple of hours before the kids are even up. And that's my best part of the day, my most productive part of the day.
Yeah.
And then I find pockets within the week as well. But yeah, no, I think it is just a mum thing. We're pretty good at organising and fitting a lot of stuff in.
Well, I hope you're still finding some time to look after yourself as well and following your own lessons.
Yeah, no. I do that.
Cool. And what motivates you to stick at it and to keep writing, to keep publishing?
Oh, it's fun. I think I'm a lifetime learner as well. And going into something new like the fiction and things, it's just it's really, I just love learning. I've always learned something, and jumping into this, it's like, wow, this is so cool. And it's another new creativity outlet, or an outlet for creativity. I've started art classes 2 or 3 years ago. That's part of my self-care. And this is just another form of that creativity, which is just, I think it just brings a real good balance into your life as well. So I think that's part of it.
Well, and I suppose as well, I mean, you mentioned Jana earlier, and the thing that I get from working with Jana is that, as well as having 30 odd years of experience in the publishing industry, she's really up to date with all of the changes, and publishing is definitely an industry where stuff is constantly changing. So there's always going to be that opportunity to learn. I'm sure Jana, she still learns something new every day about publishing. And so it's kind of a limitless pool for learning as well, as you say, is that sort of self-expression side of it.
Yeah. And that's what I found. That's what I love about it.
Cool. So what do you think makes a good non-fiction book, and how does that differ from what makes a good fiction book?
So a good non-fiction book, I think, for me is hitting the pain points. And I was lucky for me was that I had a lot of pain points that I'd experienced myself. So they were kind of reasonably easy to figure out the information I needed to share. Fiction, again, I'm still learning and I'm playing, but I think that for me, it's about understanding the tropes and making sure that you're delivering what the reader wants for entertainment.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, I suppose it depends on the genre as well, because I mean, you mentioned the book the Jadlyn Asher book that you read recently, and you highlighted the characters as something that really stood out to you. And I would have thought in romance, as long as you're hitting those tropes, as long as you're meeting the reader expectations, I would think the characters are sort of a super important element of that. Whereas maybe if you get to something like a thriller, I'm thinking like something like Dan Brown style thrillers, like maybe then it becomes more about the plot, because actually the expectation that there is, you know, there's going to be twist after twist after twist. And you even get books, you know, like I've read some Hemingway books, for example, where the characters weren't very good, the plot, nothing really happened, but it was very beautifully written. So there are like different parts of a story, I guess, that you can focus on. So yeah, it's an interesting one, and I guess that all comes back to knowing your readers and knowing your genre, right?
Totally. And that's why you know, for me at the moment, it's a hard question to ask, because I'm still in the real beginning learning phases and research and yeah, just trying to figure out what's actually happening there. So
yeah, cool. So what's the best bit of feedback that you've received so far? I'm guessing that would be about the ADHD book, because your romance hasn't hit the shelves yet.
Hasn't hit the shelves yet. Yeah, no, that's there's a couple of things that really stand out for me. One, I mean, is a feedback from a reviewer, and it was just that she said, I felt like I was reading my own story. And that kind of brought me to tears, really, because it was like, there are so many of us out there that have not had that connection. So it was just bringing that connection to the people that needed it. And the other one was actually when Corey, one of my publishing coaches, used my book as an example of a great book blurb when she was teaching other students. And I thought that was a pretty cool thing to be able to, you know, that was a big achievement on my part to, as a first book, to have someone use that as an example for the other students. So
it'd be like if you were in your art class and the art teacher holds up one of your paintings or whatever and goes, "This is how it's done."
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. So those both were pretty important to me.
Awesome. And so I know we were chatting before we jumped on this call that this is taking you a little bit out of your comfort zone. How have you found the chat?
It's good. Yep. No, it is. Yeah. No, you're easy to chat to, Dane. No, okay. I was told that by my fellow writers and friends, that you would be easy to chat to, so it's not too bad.
Yep. Oh, good. That's what I go for. That's what I go for. Well, and I suppose, I mean, in some senses, like actually putting the book out there in the first place, I'm sure there have been plenty of times along the journey where you've been a little bit out of your comfort zone, right? And but has that been I suppose, like a fulfilling thing to do, to actually put yourself out of your comfort zone and to see, oh, actually, I am capable of doing this?
Yeah, definitely. I think that's part of the thing that keeps on pushing you. It's just, you just got to keep going. I mean, I could have said no, but I've jumped on here, and I think it's with everything, isn't it? You just keep pushing yourself.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. Okay, I've only got a couple of other questions left. One of them was, and I haven't ever asked anyone this one before. I think this might have been because I told you when I was prepping the questions, I was quite tired. And I think I always try and prep 15 questions, and I'd got 14. I was like, what else can I ask? So, and so that's why the question is there anything I haven't asked you that you wish I had?
And I thought really hard about that, and I don't think there is.
Excellent.
No, good. I think I've covered it all.
That means I'm doing a good job with these. Cool. Okay, and that brings us on to the last question then, which is what's next for you, and where can people follow you to find out more?
Okay, so for Maree Davis, I do have another couple of books in mind, but I found, so the next book will be around the teenage years when things get tough and difficult. And I started trying to write that, but it was too tough because I'm in the middle of it. And it was like, nah, I need to write this in retrospect. So writing the first one was, up to age 12, really. And my son is now 16. It was actually easier because I'd got through it. Now that I'm in the midst of it, I think I still got the learning to do before I write it. And then the third book I'd really like to do, and for Maree Davis, is for the parent when their child has left home or whatever, and now they actually have to refine themselves, because I think we give so much as parents to our children that we now all of a sudden have that space in our lives to find ourselves and do things really for ourselves. So that's where Maree Davis is heading. And it might be a slow journey to get those books out, but I like sharing bits and pieces around ADHD and things like that. So I've got Maree Davis books on Facebook and on Instagram, and following through from there's a links on the Facebook page to subscribe to my newsletter, and also there's a link in the back of my book. My book's on Amazon, and recently the digital version has also gone wide, so it can be found at Barnes and Noble and other booksellers out there as well.
Awesome. Well, and I was going to say just on that as well, it actually works really nicely, because if you think, you're writing in retrospect, you're actually kind of following your readers through the lives of their children. So again, you've got that, whatever it is, like sort of 5-6 years, about 5 years, like retrospective time, so that by the time you write the book about raising a teenager, the parents who were raising a primary school kid at the time, their kids will just be becoming teenagers. So it's really nice. You can kind of sort of see them through that journey.
Yeah, that's what I'm hoping.
Cool. And what about the romance books? Have you got like a rough sort of self deadline in mind, or is it they're coming when they're coming?
Hopefully May, June. They should have the first one out on the shelf. So just getting a few things finalized for that one. So we'll keep in touch about that.
And do you have a pen name in mind for those, or are you still working on it?
Madeline Hughes.
Madeline Hughes, awesome. So people know where to look. Big thank you to Maree Davis for joining me. You're listening to The Art Show on 106.6 FM Wickham Sound. I'm your host, Dane Cobain, and this is Frank Birtwistle with Reflections.
side while I'm sat in the dark. I tell people to be strong even when times are hard. I bury myself, I wanna submerge. I'm dishing out advice while I'm sat out on the curb. I bury myself, I wanna submerge. Whoa, it's my time to look in the mirror and to change my errant ways. It's time that I fix relationships over time. It's my story, it's my time, and it's my glory. The future is for the taking. It's in the palm of your hands, and only you can find it in these derelict lands. Oh, it's my time to look in the mirror and to change my errant ways. It's time that I fix relationships over time that I've prayed. It's time to enjoy life again. It's time to let you in. It's time that I should be happy. It's time to love again. 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 It's my time to look in the mirror and to change my errant ways. It's time that I fix relationships over time that I've frayed. It's time to enjoy life again. It's time to let you in. It's time that I should be happy. It's time to love again.
That was Mirrors by Tony Goff, and before that we had Reflections by Frank Birtwistle. You're listening to The Art Show on 106.6 FM Wickham Sound. I'm your host, Dane Cobain, and it's time for us to head over to the Ilkshed now to catch up with Twangling Jack Ford for this week's album review.
Art Blakey and the Jazz Messengers. Moaning. There have been record labels which were themselves a mark of quality. Motown, Stax, Stiff, Factory and 4AD were all labels that had fans and collectors. Each had a recognisable style. The jazz label Blue Note was very much such a case. If you are looking for that sound that I and many others believe is the epitome of jazz, possibly the pinnacle of jazz, then the place to look is Blue Note. It is that kind of jazz you have heard on soundtracks, that kind of late night jazz that will be playing in the smoky clubs visited by latter-day film noir detectives. It is the sound of the look of its covers, the distinctive Blue Note covers that so evocatively captured the lived-in faces of African American musicians and matched them to perfect graphics. This album does not have the title on the cover, just the name of the act, and Blue Note 4003. I was in a jazz kind of mood and found it recommended on a streaming platform. I thought Blue Note 4003 was what it was called, and that is maybe why I listened. It is actually called Moaning, and the title tune is one I must have heard 1,000 times without knowing the title. It has a catchy riff and a lot of clever noodling improvisation. If you want jazz of this kind, then this is exactly the kind of jazz you want. It is the pure thing, it is no kind of fusion. It swings like jazz should swing with acoustic instruments. Art Blakey was a drummer who put together a number of versions of his Jazz Messengers, all with players at the top of their game. There is a kind of jazz drumming that appeals to me. I have seen it in clips of Gene Krupa and Buddy Rich. It is that tribal tom-tom solo that swings. A high point in any jazz act, so unlike the dreaded rock drum solo. There is that kind of drumming on one of the tracks on this album, a track that brings to my mind the dance scene in West Side Story, and anything that makes me think of West Side Story makes me happy. Art Blakey and the Jazz Messengers, Moaning.
Big thank you to Twangling Jack Ford for this week's album review. Thank you to Maree Davis for being this week's guest. Thank you to everyone whose music I've shared. As always, you can find us on Facebook. If you search for The Art Show on Wickham Sound, you should be able to find us. We are repeated on Wickham Sound on Monday nights. We're on the Wickham Sound Listen Again, iTunes, Spotify and wherever else you get your podcasts. Please do leave us a short review on your podcast platform of choice. You can also email me here at the studio by dropping me a line on dane.cobain@wickhamsound.org.uk. That's dane.cobain@wickhamsound.org.uk. So I'm going to love you and leave you for another week. week. Until then, I have one last tune for you, and that is going to be Coloured Sound by Harry Quinn. I'll catch you next week.
To think about. Blue means you're feeling down. Blue's all you've been. When you've got your worries round, I can't compete. But I can't decide if it's bleeding out color or letting in light. There's a hole. There's a hole. Hurry round. You've got your worries round. You let your color out. Blue's all it's been. When you've got your worries round, I can't compete. When you've got your worries round, there's no room for me. When you've got your worries round, blue's all you see.
Agatha Christie came to tea. When she knocked on the door and asked for me.